Hi everybody, welcome to Unit 4, Video 6. If you do not have your notes packet out, please get it out now. Okay, so what we're doing here, it says I can solve equations and inequalities having fractional coefficients. Okay, so what you need to do is we want to start by getting rid of all these fractions. So just like what we did in complex fractions, is you want to look for the common denominator, multiply that to the numerator, and then simplify. But you have to remember when you're doing this, all these expressions are in their own set of parentheses. Okay, so I'm not going to show the step of distributing to each numerator and then simplifying, but I am going to say, okay, you're going to multiply all the numerators by the common denominator of 6. So then we know that we would reduce. So 6 divided by 3 here would leave us with 2 times x plus 1. Here, 6 divided by 6 is going to cancel out, so it would leave you with 1 times x minus 1. On this side, the 6 divided by 2 would leave you with 3, parentheses, 2x plus 1. All right, so now that all the fractions are gone, you can just distribute and then combine your like terms and solve for x. So here we get 2x plus 2. When you distribute the 1, you get plus x minus 1 equals, when I distribute here, I get 6x plus 3. All right, so on my left-hand side, I'm going to combine my like terms. 2x plus x gives me 3x. 2 minus 1 gives me a positive 1. Positive 1. And here I just have 6x plus 3. Okay, so now I just have to combine my like terms. Since 6x is bigger, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And here I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So when I do that, 1 minus 3 gives me negative 2 equals 6x minus 3 leaves me with 3x. So I'm going to divide each side by 3. So I get negative 2/3 equals x. All right, so then there's your answer right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at number 2. So number 2 is a proportion because you have a fraction equals a fraction. So the easiest way to solve proportions is you can cross multiply. So when I cross multiply, I'm going to get 4x times x plus 5 equals 12 times x plus 8. So when I go ahead and distribute that, I get 4x squared. Oops, sorry about my pen. Plus 20x equals 12x plus 96. All right, so now since I can see that this is a 4x squared and there's no other x squared, it means it's going to end up as a trinomial. So I need to set this equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 12x from both sides, and I'm going to subtract 96 from both sides. So that's going to leave me with 4x squared plus 8x minus 96 equals 0. So then, remember the first rule of factoring here is you have to factor out a GCF. So when you factor out that GCF of 4, you're going to be left with, when you take out the 4, you get x squared plus 2x minus 24 equals 0. So then when you factor here, you're saying x squared plus 2x minus 24. So what are the factors of negative 24 that add to 2? So we're going to get, the factors are going to give us 4 and 6. So x plus 6, x minus 4. So then my two answers for x are negative 6 and 4. Because remember, you're setting both of these equal to 0 and you're solving, just like we did last chapter. When you solve for x. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next one. So here, again, we want to look for the common denominator between 4, 10, and 5. So that would be 20. And again, you're distributing it to all the numerators and simplifying, but I'm going to just not, I'm just going to simplify from the beginning. So 20 divided by 4 is going to leave me with 5y, parentheses, 2y minus 1. And then in the middle, 20 divided by 10 is 2, so this is plus 2 times 3. And here 20 divided by 5 is going to give you 4, and then y, parentheses, y plus 2. So again, we need to distribute first. So we get 10y squared minus 5y plus 6 equals 4y squared plus 8y. All right, so on the left-hand side, 10y is bigger than 4y, so I'm going to subtract to the left. So I'm going to subtract 4y squared, and I'm also going to subtract 8y from both sides. So when I do that, I get 6y squared minus 13y plus 6 equals 0. So then when I do this one here, since the coefficient of x squared is greater than 1, you have to do your x method and do factor by grouping. And then once you do your factor by group, okay, so it's going to factor into 3y minus 2 and 2y minus 3 equals 0. And again, if you could not see that right away, that this was the factor, then you'd have to do your x method and do factor by grouping. So remember, we're setting both of these equal to 0 and we're solving. So when we solve, we're going to get, in this case, x equals a positive 2/3. And right here, we're going to get x equals a positive 3 over 2. So again, I'm skipping that step where I'm setting it equal to 0 and solving. But you can, oh, I'm sorry, not x. They have it as y equals, sorry. So y equals. All right. So I want you guys to go ahead and try number 4. But you just be careful right here with this negative, because remember, you're going to have to distribute that negative, because you have to remember that there's an implied set of parentheses around x plus 1. So pause the video and you try number 4. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how you did. So right here, the common denominator was 30. And so when you simplified, you got 6x parentheses x plus 1. Here, remember, you had the negative. So it was going to, 30 divided by 6 is 5. So we have negative 5 times x plus 1 equals 10 times 1. So then when you went ahead and combined your like terms, you got the trinomial of 6x squared plus x minus 15 equals 0. So again, I skipped that step. I didn't show the factor by grouping. So if you can't go straight to the two parentheses, you're going to have to draw your x and do your factor by grouping in order to get your two sets of parentheses. Then remember, we're setting both of these equal to 0 and solving for x. So in the first one, you're going to get a negative 5 over 3. And in the second one, you're going to get a positive 3 over 2. Okay. All right. So now number 5, again, it's the same thing, except the difference here is there's no equal sign. Now it's an inequality. So it means you're going to have a range of answers. All right, but same rule applies. We got to start by getting rid of the denominator. So between 4, 12, and 1, the common denominator is 12. So I'm going to multiply 12 to all the numerators and then simplify. So here I'm left with 3 parentheses x minus 14 is greater than or equal to 1 times 5x minus 3 times 12. Okay, so when I distribute, I'm going to get 3x minus 42 is greater than or equal to 5x minus 36. So now again, remember, I'm solving for x with this inequality, so I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And here I'm going to add 36 to both sides. So I get negative 6 is greater than or equal to 2x. And then I'm going to divide each side by 2. So I get negative 3 is greater than or equal to x, but remember, you always want to write it with x first. So you get x is less than or equal to negative 3. And so then you could go ahead and draw the number line, but I don't need to see the number line. I just want to see the answer in interval notation. But if you drew the number line, it would look like this. So here's your negative 3. X is less than or equal to, so it would be everything to the left. So then that would be parentheses negative infinity to negative 3 bracket. So the interval is what I want to see. So I want to see the inequality and the interval. All right, so for number 6, again, you have to look for the common denominator. So between 9, 3, and 1, the common denominator is 9. So when you multiply 9 to, I'm going to put the 9 on this side. So when you distribute to all the numerators, here you're left with 9 divided by 9 is 1. So you're left with 2 times 1 minus 3 times 4y is less than or equal to 2 times 9. So then when I simplify here, I'm going to get 2 minus 12y is less than or equal to 18. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I get negative 12y is less than or equal to 16. I'm going to divide each side by negative 12. But remember, when you divide by a negative, you have to switch the inequality. So I get y is greater than or equal to negative 16/12, but you always want everything in lowest terms. So you get y is greater than or equal to. Here you can factor out a 4. So you're going to say negative 4 over 3. And remember, I don't need to see the number line. I just want to see the inequality, which is this. Y is greater than or equal to negative 4/3, and the interval. So it's saying everything greater than negative 4/3. So bracket negative 4 over 3 because it's equal to, so bracket, and greater than, so towards positive infinity. So, and then here's your interval. All right, for number 7, again, you're looking for the common denominator. So the common denominator here is 21. So when you distribute, you're going to get 7 parentheses x plus 2 minus 3 parentheses x minus 2 is greater than or equal to 4. So then when we distribute, you're going to get 7x plus 14 minus 3x plus 6 is greater than or equal to, oh, I'm sorry, not 4, 21 times 2. Where's my eraser? So 42. So 42. 42. All right, so let me combine my like terms on the left-hand side first. So 7x minus 3x is 4x. 14 plus 6 is going to give me plus 20, greater than or equal to 42. So then I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. So I get 4x is greater than or equal to 22. So I'm going to divide each side by 4. So I'm going to do my work up here. So I get x is greater than or equal to, and remember you always want to simplify. So I'm going to get 11 over 2. And again, I want to write my answer in interval notation. So you're saying x is greater than or equal to 11 over 2. So I'm going to say bracket 11 over 2, comma, to positive infinity. So here's my final answer there. All right, I want you guys to go ahead and try number 8. So pause the video and try number 8. All right, so for number 8, you should have got x is greater than negative 3/8. So remember, we're writing the interval. So parentheses negative 3/8 to infinity. Okay, so let's go ahead and do 9 and 10. So again, you want to look for the common denominator. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video and try numbers 9 and numbers 10. Okay, so for number 9, you had to, once you got to this point, you noticed it was a trinomial, so you had to factor. So again, this goes back to the last unit. You cannot forget how to solve this inequality. So remember, you look for the roots. So the roots are negative 3 and 1. You have to test each range. So something to the left of the negative 3, in between negative 3 and 1, and to the right of 1. So the only one that was a true statement was in between negative 3 and 1. So these are our roots. So it's open circle, and everything in between. So we say parentheses, negative 3 to 1 parentheses. And remember, you don't have to draw the number line, but if it helps you find the interval, then you're going to want to do it. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and try number 10. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at number 10. So here, the common denominator was 12. So when we reduced everything and then simplified and set equal to 0, we got 2x squared minus x minus 10. So again, I did factoring. If you don't know how to factor here, you have to do the grouping method. So make the x, find the factors, group it, and then simplify it. But when you do, here's your 2 parentheses. Again, I don't need to see the number line, but if you want to do the number line so that you know which way your arrow goes so that you can write your interval, then here's the number line. And remember, you have to check every space in between the roots. So the roots were 5 over 2 and negative 2. So you picked a number to the left of negative 2. So I tried negative 3. In between negative 2 and 5 over 2, so 0. And a number to the right of 5 over 2. So I picked 4. So those were the 3 sections that or the 3 numbers that I chose. And so then the true statements were to the left of negative 2 and to the right of 5 over 2. So here's my interval, parentheses, negative infinity to negative 2 bracket, or bracket 5 over 2 to infinity. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next page. So if you turn it to the next page, we're doing the same thing. We're still solving for x, except the difference between these ones and the other ones is now the denominator has an expression, whereas in the other ones, the denominators were just whole numbers. So what you want to do first here is first you want to simplify the expression if possible. So in this case, it means we need to factor it out. So x squared minus 4 is the difference of squares. So I'm going to rewrite this as 10 over x plus 2, x minus 2 equals 1 minus 1 over x plus 2. So again, we still need to look for the common denominator, except this time the common denominator is going to be an expression. So in this case, the common denominator is x plus 2, x minus 2. So it's this whole thing, x plus 2, x minus 2. And again, we're multiplying it to all the numerators. Here, x plus 2, x minus 2 would cancel out, so you'd be left with 10. We're going to bring down the equal sign. On this one, I would distribute it to 1, so it'd be x plus 2 times x minus 2 times 1. And then here I have a negative 1, and then x plus 2, x minus 2 over x plus 2. The x plus 2's would cancel out. So you'd have parentheses x minus 2. So now that all the denominators are gone, I can just distribute and simplify. So this is 10. I already knew that this one was a difference of squares, so I know it's going to simplify to x squared minus 4. And here when I distribute the negative, I get negative x plus 2. So again, we're solving for x. This one has x squared, so it means I need to set equal to 0. But first, I'm going to combine my like terms on the right-hand side and put it in standard form. So I have x squared minus x. Negative 4 plus 2 gives me a negative 2. Now I'm going to set it equal to 0 by subtracting 10 from both sides. So then I'll go over here. I have 0 equals x squared minus x minus 12. So I look for the factors of negative 12 that add to negative 1. So those are going to be x minus 4 and x plus 3. So then what I need to do is say my two answers for x would be 4 or negative 3. And so when it comes to these problems, you always have to check. You have to be able to plug x into the denominator. There's only one number that wouldn't work. You never want this denominator to be a 0. So like here, if x was negative 2 and you had 0 in the denominator, it wouldn't work because a number divided by 0 is undefined. But both of these work when you plug them in for x, so it's okay. All right, so number 12, again, we need to find the common denominator. So between x and 2x, the common denominator is 2x. And again, you're multiplying these to all the numerators and simplifying. So when you distribute to the first term, you'd have 2x over x, which is going to simplify to just 2. Here, 2x over 2x is going to simplify to just negative 1. And here, you're going to get 2x times 3. So we have 2 minus 1 is 1 equals 6x. We're going to divide each side by 6, so you get 1/6 equals x. And again, since it's has the x in the denominator, in this case, it can be 1/6. 1/6 would work because it would not leave us with a 0 in the denominator. Remember, if you had a 0, if whatever you solved for x and then it simplified to a 0 in the denominator, it wouldn't work. Okay, so let's go ahead and try the next one, number 13. And again, it has a negative in here, so you need to be careful with this negative sign. All right, so the common denominator, remember these two are expressions, y minus 1, y plus 1. So the common denominator is going to be both of those, y minus 1 times y plus 1. So again, when we distribute it here, the y minus 1s would cancel out, so you're left with 5 parentheses y plus 1 minus, on this second fraction, the y's plus 1s would cancel out, so you'd have 4 parentheses y minus 1 equals all of this times 0, which is just going to stay 0. So here I just have to distribute. So I have 5y plus 5. When I distribute the negative 4, I have negative 4y plus 4 equals 0. Then I'm going to combine my like terms. 5y minus 4y leaves me with 1y. And 5 plus 4 is going to give me a positive 9 equals 0. Well, remember I need to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. So I get y equals negative 9. And then you just want to check. If you plug in y for negative 9, make sure it doesn't end up as 0, and it doesn't. So then that's your answer. Okay, so number 14 is a proportion. So remember, the easiest way to solve proportions is to cross multiply. So I'm going to cross multiply. So x times x equals x plus 5 times x minus 6. So x times x is going to give me x squared. Here, when I distribute, I'm going to get x squared minus 6x plus 5x minus 30. So on the right-hand side, when I combine my like terms, so this x squared, I get x squared. Negative 6x plus 5x gives me a negative 1x minus 30. I'm going to subtract x squared from both sides. When I do that, they're going to cancel. So I get 0 equals negative x minus 30. Since I'm solving for x, I'm going to add x to both sides. So I get x equals 30. Oops. And so then when I check it, that's okay. It can be 30. So x equals 30. Okay, let's go ahead and try number 15. So again, with number 15, you need to make sure that your denominators are fully factored first. So x squared minus 1, I'm just going to cross this out. This is a difference of squares. So it's going to factor into x minus 1, x plus 1. And so now that they're all simplified, I can go ahead and look for the common denominator. So the common denominator is going to be x minus 1, x plus 1. So x minus 1, x plus 1. All right, so in the first fraction, the x minus 1s would cancel out, so you'd be left with x plus 1 times 2x plus 3. You're going to bring down the minus sign. In the second fraction, the x plus 1s would cancel out. So you have x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. And in the last fraction, x plus 1, x minus 1, and x minus 1, x plus 1, those would cancel. So you're just left with 10. All right, so now here's where you need to be careful is with this negative sign here. So you're eventually going to distribute that negative sign to everything in this second set. So you want to think of this as like a bracket. That first you want to simplify the trinomial, then distribute the negative to it, okay? So here on this first term, when I distribute, I get 2x squared plus 3x plus 2x plus 3 when I distributed here. And then I'm just going to bring down this minus sign, and I'm going to bring down these brackets, okay? So then when I distribute on the inside, here I get 2x squared minus 3x minus 2x plus 3. And again, it has like a big bracket, equals 10. So this one I have a lot of terms to combine. So first I'm just going to combine these. So I get 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. And then I'm going to bring down this minus sign again. I'm going to bring down the brackets. And I'm going to simplify what I have on the inside. So I have 2x squared, negative 3x, and negative 2x is a negative 5x. And then plus 3. Again, bracket equals 10. Okay, so now you want to distribute that negative here to everything inside the parentheses. So I have 2x squared plus 5x plus 3 minus 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 equals 10. So now I can go ahead and combine my like terms. So 2x squared and negative 2x squared are going to cancel. 5x and 5x are going to give me a 10x. And 3 and negative 3, those two are also going to cancel. So then I'm going to bring down the equal sign and bring down the 10. So I'm going to divide each side by 10. And so, oops, why did it work like that? Let me try that again. So I'm going to do equals 10. So I'm going to divide by 10, divide by 10. So I get x equals 1. But now I need to check, can x be 1? So if I plug in x here, then I would get 1 minus 1, which would give me 0. And I'm not allowed to have 0 in the denominator. So the answer to this problem is no solution. So we actually did all that work to end up with an answer that doesn't work. So no solution. So you always have to check because yes, you'll get an answer, but again, it can't be a possible choice because when you plug in 1 in for x, 1 minus 1 is 0, and 0 in the denominator is undefined. All right, so sometimes you will have to do a lot of work to end up with no solution, but you always have to verify. Okay, so let's go ahead and try number 16. Or actually, I want you to try number 16. So look for the common denominator and then see if you can simplify and make sure your solution works. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so remember the common denominator here is x parentheses x plus 1. So you have to be careful because remember, this is in an expression. It's in a parentheses. So it's x parentheses x plus 1. So when you distribute to the numerators and simplify, you end up with this line here. And then once you combine all your like terms, you get 0 equals 6x squared plus x minus 1. So again, what I did is I factored. If you couldn't tell what the factors were right away and put them in the two parentheses, you would have had to do your x and factor by grouping or whichever method you used. And then remember, once you solve, you're setting these two equal to 0 to solve. So you get x equals negative 1/2 and 1/3. You can plug them in for x, and if you plug them in for x, you will not get 0. So then they both are solutions. All right, I want you to go ahead and try number 17. So you need to start by factoring t squared plus t minus 2. And then once that's factored, you can identify the common denominator. So go ahead and pause the video and try 17. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how you did. So the common denominator here was t plus 2t minus 1. So once you distribute to the numerators and simplify, here's the work you got. And then when you combine, you got t squared plus t minus 2. And so then when you factored it, you were left with t equals negative 2 or 1. And this is actually no solution because when you plug in negative 2 here for t, you get negative 2 plus 2 equals 0. So you can't have 0 in the denominator. And when you plug in 1 into this fraction, 1 minus 1 is 0, so that wouldn't work either. You couldn't get 0 in the denominator. So neither of them worked, so your answer was no solution. All right, so for number 18, what you need to do first is expand it in this case. So you have x minus 3 over x plus 1 squared. So you want to think of it as x minus 3 times x minus 3 over x plus 1 times x plus 1. So you're writing it out twice. And then just bring down the rest of what you have. 2 times x minus 3 over x plus 1 plus 3. Okay, so at this point, you can go ahead and identify the common denominator, but you need to be careful with this part right here because this is 2 times this, so you're actually going to distribute the 2 to both of those. So you might want to just rewrite it again like x minus 3 times x minus 3 over x plus 1 times x plus 1 equals 2x minus 6 over x plus 1 plus 3, okay? So that might be easier to rewrite again. And so then remember, you have these parentheses over all your expressions. So when we look for the common denominator here, the common denominator is going to be x plus 1 times x plus 1 because this has 2 of them, so you need to have both. So x plus 1 times x plus 1. So when you distribute it to the first set, x plus 1 is going to cancel out, so you're left with just x minus 3 times x minus 3. When you distribute it to this first parentheses here, one of the x plus 1s is going to cancel. So you have 2x minus 6 times x plus 1. And when you distribute to the last term, you have 3 times x plus 1 times x plus 1. All right, so now with this one, we have a lot of computation to do. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do all that computation. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how you did with this last problem here. So the common denominator we said was x parentheses x plus 1. And then I told you it was a lot of computation, so you had to distribute. Make sure this 3 here, remember, there's like a bracket because you have to do these parentheses first, simplify, and then distribute the 3 to all the terms in the trinomial. So then when you combine all your like terms, you finally get to here, 4x squared plus 8x minus 12. So remember, the first rule of factoring is to factor out a GCF of a 4. And then you look for the factors of negative 3 that add to 2. So when you factor that, you're going to get x plus 3 parentheses x minus 1. So then your two choices for x are negative 3 or 1. And when you plug them back in, neither one is going to make a 0 in the denominator. So they're both solutions. All right, thank you for watching the video.